Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by the members of oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with the members of manicexpression.webs.com, the website that you can truly express yourself.
This channel is recommended by the National Education Association.
Okay, we got things going on, so, hey, we got a camera here, and we got a microphone, so that means it's time for the podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Casual Chats. I am Patricia.
And I am Kevin Guillermo. We're both here from Old School Lane.
And we're going to be discussing about Nickelodeon. We're going to be discussing about the little behind-the-scenes stories and some of our favorite shows and reviews and a whole bunch more. We actually got a lot of questions from our friends at Manic Expression.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Let's do it.
All right. So for those who are starting off on the Nickelodeon tribute, Nickelodeon first started as a local TV network in Columbus, Ohio in the year 1977. Around that time, there were not a lot of programs for kids. The only time in which they would be showing programs was around Saturday morning. Some of the programs would include Scooby-Doo's Laugh Olympics, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, Wacky Races, and a lot more.
Oh man, Scooby-Doo's Laugh Olympics, man. I loved it. I liked it. I gotta say, there's a lot of debate of Scooby-Doo incarnations. A lot of people like it where it's the Mystery Inc. gang, where it's Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby. And a lot of people like it when it's Scooby, Shaggy, and Scrappy. And I gotta say, there's a lot of incarnations of Scooby-Doo. I like them all, with the exception of the recent ones. I never really could get into, like, Mystery Inc. I'm still trying to... It's taken me a very long time for me to get used to Matthew Lillard voicing Shaggy. Kassim was, like, the best, in my opinion, of Shaggy.
Casey Kasem, yes, Casey Kasem.
Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he's still the best. And occasionally he still does voice Shaggy from time to time, doesn't he?
Really? I didn't know that. I thought he retired because I know Matthew Lillard just did the McDonald's commercial. I didn't know he... I still can't... It's so hard for me to get used to it because I love it. And it's so... I mean, I think it's really remarkable how Frank Welker is the only one that's still doing Scooby-Doo. All the other cast members, I don't know what happened to them. Joseph and Hanna-Barbera passed away. Kassim, he's retired. Casey. And, all the others who voiced Daphne and Velma, they're retired or they're doing other stuff. So it's just like, there's not that many people.
Right, and Don Messick passed away in, I think it was 89 or 90 or something like that?
No, I think it was around later on because he was still doing the Smurfs in the 90s.
Right, I'm sorry. I was gonna say. I believe when a pup named Scooby-Doo, that was the last time he voiced as Scooby.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that because most likely, but I do know that a pup named Scooby-Doo was the last Scooby-Doo cartoon to air on Saturday mornings.
Right. That is true.
We should also note that originally we were going to write a book, me and Patty, called the Birth and the Death of Saturday Morning Cartoons, which was actually going to be a coffee table book or, regular book. We haven't decided yet, but a book that talks about the origins of Saturday morning cartoons and how it slowly declined. And just recently, they just brought Saturday morning cartoons back on Nickelodeon, ironically, and also on the CWB11.
Yeah, that's right. We were going to write a book about that. But I'm sure we'll get to it sometime.
Yeah.
It's just going to take a lot of research, and hopefully we'll probably get, maybe triple the amount of interviews that we've gotten so far. Right.
Yeah.
Where were we? Yeah, that's right. 70s Saturday morning cartoons. Another one that I wrote down was Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. And
Oh man, yeah. I love that show. I really did. It was probably one of the. I think it was. I don't know if it was, but I think it was the very first Saturday morning cartoon to actually talk about sex and drugs and peer pressure and all that. It's such a shame though that they released that very shitty movie.
oh yeah, the one with Kenan Thompson. Yes.
A very shitty movie. I mean, it was such a fucking ripoff of like Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because it was like they were cartoons, and then if they come to the real world, they can't stay very long because then they'll evaporate. I mean, who comes up with that Mickey Mouse bullshit? I mean, it was such a stupid fucking idea. It really was. And not only that, I don't know, it was just Aaron Carter was in it, and he can't fucking act for shit. It was a terrible movie.
Yeah, thank God we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, unless we do a Fat Albert tribute, which we didn't have much to talk about considering it was just a long show in the movie.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I love Fat Albert, don't get me wrong. I just wish that the movie did justice to it, and it was just, something fucking retarded like that.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see what you mean. So yeah, you have all these Saturday morning cartoons that would show up for maybe like an hour or two a day, and then afterwards, the majority of the time, they didn't have like those programs in which kids can sit down and watch all the time. Also, throughout the early years of Nickelodeon, it was trying to be more educational for children. A lot of the programs that they gotten were acquired from other sources, mostly Canada. So we would see shows...
Canada.
Yes, Canada.
Uh-huh.
They have free health care and lots of maple syrup.
And they also get to have the Teletoon Network, which has like He-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Alvin and the Chipmunks and all that. I'm very pissed off at that.
Yes, why boy, you are such a lucky bastard. Anyway, so as time went on, Nickelodeon was slowly losing its popularity around the 80s because there were a lot of better programs that were actually made for their exclusive channels. The number one... what was the number one channel in the 80s? Do you remember? There was a time... I know that CBS was around dead last. There was ABC, NBC...
I think it was CBS. CBS had most of the shows. I think that was the biggest one on the biggest one in the 80s, you said, right?
Yes, but I know in the early 80s it was slowly starting to lose its popularity, and then around the mid to late 80s is when it became like the number one program, the number one channel, correct?
Right.
So it was between those three channels that would generate all these Saturday morning programs: NBC, ABS, and CBS. It's ABC, NBC, and CBS. There we go. So some of the programs from the late 70s and early 80s would consist of Pinwheel, America Goes Bananas. There would also be shows like Danger Mouse, Live Wire, You Can't Do That on Television, Mr. Wizard's World, Banana Man, The Count Duckula, David the Gnome.
Count Duckula was good.
A lot of people said that Danger Mouse was way better than Count Duckula. They didn't even like Count Duckula very much because they thought it was odd.
Really? Why did they think it was odd?
I don't know. Maybe because they liked Danger Mouse better. In fact, one of the shows that you actually hated when we were talking about it, Banana Man. Banana Man was overshadowed by Danger Mouse. And Banana Man is a very weird show to begin with.
Have you ever seen any episodes of Banana Man? Are they available?
Of course, yeah, they're available on YouTube. I mean, that's how I was able to review them. And it is very odd, the fact that you have a kid who is basically supposed to be like a spoof of Superman, in which he comes from like this planet, and then he got his powers because the crescent moon just happened to be shaped of a banana. And whenever he eats the banana, he turns into Banana Man.
Oh my god, that's... Oh, God.
Yeah, it was a very weird show, that's for sure.
So I have a question to ask you. If the moon was in shape of a foot, I would have the powers of a foot?
Yeah, you would be Footman. You would be basically a walking, talking superhero podiatrist. Then we cut into around 1983 to 1984, in which Nickelodeon was at a point of being bankrupt. They were $40 million in debt, which in today's time is $200 million, and they were the worst rated network on television. They were about, yeah, it's true. You could check it up on my blog post called Nickelodeon From Worst to First. And then it talks to us of the story about the two guys who pretty much saved Nickelodeon, Fred Seibert and Alan Goodman.
Fred Seibert, what a great guy.
Yeah, he's great. It was so awesome for him to take some time to actually answer our questions.
Of course. He's really good, and he's also very creative.
For those who don't know, Fred Seibert was the first creative director for MTV, and him alongside with Alan Goodman and a group of men, they were basically in charge of doing a lot of the advertisements that you would see in today. Due to the leadership of him and Alan Goodman, they created the MTV logo, and as well as the Nickelodeon logo.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention the very now iconic advertisements that you see in Nickelodeon, in which they would have like the Nickelodeon theme song, in which they have like the Splat logo, some of the songs that would come into it. I mean, that was mostly their work.
Mm.
And also he saved Hanna-Barbera from going down at one point because they were losing popularity with a lot of their programs, especially all those Scooby-Doo sequels and spin-offs that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Fred Seibert came along, this was after him and Alan Goodman separated, Fred Seibert came and became the president of Hanna-Barbera, and he pretty much gave it a huge overhaul with releasing shows like Two Stupid Dogs and SWAT Cats, The Pirates of Dark Water.
Did you like that show, Two Stupid Dogs, Patty?
It was a very interesting show. I know it tried to copy off Ren and Stimpy, but it was okay. It was funny.
Yeah, it has quirks, right?
Yeah, it had its quirks. Fred Seibert wanted to have a Secret Squirrels spin-off derived from Two Stupid Dogs, but it never turned out to be.
Yeah, I love the Secret Squirrel. Do you prefer the 1960s Secret Squirrel or the 1990s Secret Squirrel?
Well, when Fred Seibert said that the original was boring, I decided to watch them both, and there is a bit of quirkiness and a little bit of humor that the 90s gives that the 60s kind of loses on. It was definitely one of Hanna-Barbera's weaker cartoons, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, it was trying to be really epic and stuff, trying to capitalize on old James Bond sort of thing instead of it would being a squirrel, but yeah, I guess it was okay, the original, but I prefer the 90s one. Okay, so moving on. So then afterwards, they saved Nickelodeon, and the first show that everybody remembers, it pretty much capitalizing on the popularity, was You Can't Do That on Television.
Oh, yeah.
The Canadian sketch comedy show that would be the inspiration for all that.
Yep.
And that's where slime was invented as well.
Really?
Yes. Every time you would say the phrase, I don't know, if somebody was asking you a question, you would be slimed at. So let's just say, hey, Kevin, what's 2 + 2?
4.
Okay, what's the capital of New York?
New York.
Well, technically it's Albany, but okay. Hey, Kevin, if you were to mix red and blue with a combination of green and yellow, what color would you be making?
Shit.
Okay, that was something I didn't expect. What do you want for Christmas?
What do I want for Christmas? I want a lot of things for Christmas. I want Prometheus on Blu-ray, Lady and the Tramp on Blu-ray. I want a lot of things.
You know what? Forget it. I'm trying to make you say the infamous word, but apparently it's not going to work.
What infamous word?
I don't know. Ah, crap.
You just got slimed. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tricking me, you jerk.
I always trick you, Patty.
Okay, so while you can't do that on television, was very popular around the early 80s. The show that everybody remembers tuning in on Nickelodeon is Double Dare.
Yeah, I think that's what really put Nickelodeon on the map.
Yes, it did. It had the slime, and it was the very first game show for kids.
Oh, wow.
Well, Patty, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
That we could tell the audience. Who was our favorite? And this was a great moment because I was on the phone too. Who was our favorite person that we interviewed from Nickelodeon?
Ah, yes, Mark Summers.
It was a great. Mark Summers. For anyone who listens to this and reads the interview, was such a very humble, nice man. And it's funny because originally me and Patty had gotten the impression, because he's so busy with the Food Network, that he was going to be so nasty. And we did come across somebody nasty who we'll get to. But it was just, he was such a nice person, filled with so much knowledge about behind the scenes of the 1980s. I mean, this guy was such a great guy to talk to.
Yeah, he really was.
And it's too bad that they can't hear the phone conversation we had, because it was so great to listen to.
Yeah, it was really great, and it was such an honor to, reach him. I mean, I didn't think that was going to be possible.
No.
I mean, when I told you about it, that we gotten a hold of him, you freaked out. I mean, you jumped around for joy, and then you just... I don't even know how to describe it, of course. It was just so unbelievable.
Well, it's very rarely you're going to get a phone conversation with one of your, somebody who we watched on TV. I mean, when do you get an opportunity to talk to someone? It's not like you talk to this guy every day, and he was telling us he had a crisis.
Yeah, and he only had like 15, 20 minutes to talk to us, and he talked to us for about 30.
Yeah, he actually, it was so nice of him to extend the time. And guys, really, I mean, I really would love for them to hear it, but he was just such a nice, really nice guy. Really nice guy.
Absolutely.
And then there was Cheryl Blaylock.
Yes. Eureka from Eureka's Castle. Oh, wait. Before we get to Eureka, how did you feel about the accident that Mark Summers went through about a month or two ago?
Very, very horrible. I mean, it was very sad because, he's, it's unfortunate for anybody, but I really wanted to send him a card, but, I was very, very upset by that, because, I'm just glad he's okay and nobody got seriously hurt.
Yeah, I know. He's recovering now. From what I've read on his Facebook page and his Twitter messages, he says he's recovering well. He still needs a little bit of recovering, needs some surgery in his face, but other than that, he seems to be doing okay.
That's good. I'm glad he's doing all right.
Yeah, me too.
And I mean, I know he's really busy with the Food Network and all, which is why we couldn't really talk to him that much.
Yes.
But I remember when you asked him about. When you told him, it's in the interview, but when we spoke about the attire that he wore on Double Dare.
Oh yeah, that's right. In which I asked the question about back in the 80s, wearing a suit jacket, a tie, sneakers, and a pair of jeans would have been considered like really weird. But in a way, he was really ahead of his time, because that style is like really, really hot. Especially Ellen DeGeneres, in which she kind of like wears the suit and she has the sneakers on. And he cracked up and he said, the wardrobe person was the one who got the stuff for me, and that's what I wore. And trust me, it's a huge improvement over the really stupid, over-the-top sweaters that Phil Moore from Nick Arcade wore.
Yeah, they were really trying to cash in on that. And like, when did that come out?
Nick Arcade came out in the year 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Or... yeah, I think it was 1991, 1992, yes.
It came around that time. Cool.
Yes, and I already discussed about that, and it was really, the Nick Arcade was really ahead of its time, because it had the blue screen effects, in which at a time no other show or even movie was doing that. It was still in its phase. It wasn't at the point at which it was using computers as of yet, but it was kind of like in the final years in which they were using monsters either as costumes or as... Yeah, so I just thought it was really interesting how ahead of the time that they were, creating like these blue screen effects for the people from Nick Arcade to be able to move around the video zone. It made you feel like you wanted to be there, and it's kind of like the precursor to the Wii, in which you can be able to interact with it, and the Xbox 360's Kinect, and the PlayStation Move.
Now, let me ask you a question, Patty. What would you do if you were in Nick Arcade?
Well, if I was in Nick Arcade, I would obviously kick the shit out of the entire games. No problem. Because the girls who played the games in Nick Arcade, they sucked.
That's not what you said. You told me they were really good.
You must be... No. I mean, they were really awful. I mean, there's this YouTube video in which there's this girl who's on the video zone, and it's the easiest thing in the universe. All you have to do is just... All you have to do...
You told me that you thought the girls were kick ass on that show.
No. You confuse it with something else. I'm telling you. You confuse it with something else.
Oh, okay. You told me that you... Oh, okay. You said you and Plankton were buddies. Okay.
Yes, and we're getting the Krabby Patty formula, right?
I can picture you getting the Krabby Patty formula, actually.
Yes, I'm sure you do. Anyway, so moving on. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So Nick Arcade. Yeah, I would most likely answer all the questions because they were pretty typical questions. Depending on where Mikey was in the virtual world, whether he was in outer space or whether he was in his neighborhood or the medieval times, I would have answered those questions no problem. And then going into the video challenge, they had a whole bunch of games there. They had things like Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Sonic the Hedgehog, ActRaiser, and they had a whole bunch of games there. And I think that I would have done very well getting the points. And the video zone, of course, I would have nailed it. I mean, going back to the girl, as I said, there's a YouTube video in which there's a girl that all she needed to do was just grab 3 rings. And the doors would be open and closing. I mean, it would take place in like some sort of ancient Aztec or Mayan or Egyptian pyramid. And if she was able to touch sunlight, then she can be able... The door's all open and the traps are all gone and she can be able to grab it. So here's what happened.
I got a question to ask you.
Yes?
What would you do if you were actually trapped in a video game?
Can I finish the talking first and then I can answer your question?
No.
Okay, if I was trapped in a video game, I would try my very best to pass it. There. Okay, so the girl...
Wait a minute. Let's make it a little challenging. What would you do if you were in a video game and a giant foot was after you and it was shooting flames from its toenails?
What kind of question is that? What are we dealing with, a dragon now?
A dragon foot? It could work.
Well, what kind of weapons would I have?
I have no idea.
Okay, I would use ice, and I would block the fire, and then I would get my sword, and I would cut its head off. There. Now, can I please continue with the story?
You're a very violent person, but go ahead.
Thank you. And you have to be. Anyway, so the girl, she was able to touch the sunlight. And then afterwards, all she had to do was just get the 3 rings. The obstacles were gone. But she acted like, the obstacles were still there. And she was still, crawling all over. And then afterwards, when she finally got a clue, she was already killed because the spikes were coming out. And then afterwards, time was up. She was basically stuck in that one level throughout the entire game in 60 seconds. And, oh my god, I mean, on YouTube and Nick Arcade, it has been considered that she was the worst player in any kids game show ever.
All she had to do was get rings?
Yeah, all she had to do was get the 3 rings, the obstacles were cleared out, and all she had to do...
maybe she was nervous. You gotta take into consideration that you're a kid, and you're on a TV show, and there's, thousands of people watching you. It's not exactly... there's a lot of pressure going on. I mean, she probably got stage fright. I mean, if you were on TV, you wouldn't be shitting in your pants?
Not really, because I would actually know what I was doing. I mean, it sounded like...
Okay, well, she was nervous. I mean, give the poor kid a break. I mean, if you're on national TV and all this, and you got somebody yelling at you to do this, I'd be shitting bricks if I was her. How old was she?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe she was, she looked like she was about 12 or 13 or something.
Give the kid a break, would you, please?
I don't know. I mean, maybe a lot of people on YouTube are being a little too harsh on her, but I just can't help but just shake my head in embarrassment.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so as I pointed out with Nick Arcade, that show has poorly aged. I mean, it didn't utilize to its full capabilities. I mean, if they would have focused everything on video games, then maybe it would have been a little bit stronger. But, you know, the more I see it, the more it shows how poorly it is aged. I mean, I've already mentioned that out of every Nickelodeon game show host who has ever been on, Phil Moore is the goofiest game show host ever.
Oh, they said Phil Lamar. I was going to say Phil Lamar's genius.
Are you kidding me? I would love Phil Lamar to do Nick Arcade.
I love Phil Lamar. By the way, he's voicing Baxter Stockman tomorrow, which because I got to work at my very shitty job, I'll be missing my episode of Ninja Turtles tomorrow, so I'm very pissed off about that.
I know. I'll get some Kleenex.
Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, Phil Moore is a really goofy guy. I mean, you know, looking back at either between Phil Moore or Mike O'Malley, Phil Moore takes the cake. I mean, if it's not the goofy sweaters, it's the way he hums the songs and the way he does the corny jokes. It's sometimes painful to watch.
Well, give us an example of a
Okay. Here's the one thing that I really hated. I mean, first of all, he called Dr. Robotnik Dr. Roboneck.
What?
Yeah, it's true. He called him Dr. Roboneck.
Yeah, okay, the guy's an official fucking moron. What did he call Bowser? Boner? Did he call Sonic Ronic? Did he call Dr. Wily Dr. Willy? Is he a moron? Like, really? Like, I mean, I don't think the brain cells were working around at that time period for the man.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly does not know a thing about video games.
Yeah, so we got Dr. Robotnik, Dr. Eggman, and Dr. Roboneck. Okay.
Yes, Roboneck sounds like a robotic Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, I know. Tune in next week for Super Mario Brothers Super Show while Boner shoots flames from his fucking mouth. Or Dr. Wily, a.k.a. Dr. Willy, is going to defeat Mega Man.
No, not Mega Mega Man.
Instead of Bison, we'll have Ricin.
Yes, the San Francisco treat.
Yeah, the San Francisco treat that says, finish him.
Oh, yes.
Because, you know, in Mortal Kombat, there's Kano, there's Bano. All right, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done butchering the popular villains in video games. So.
Yes, I think we're going to get so much hatred from all the gamers. Okay, so... Okay, I'm back. Okay. Jumped ship like 1,000 fucking times. We went all the way up to... talking about the origins of Nickelodeon, then talking about the people that we interviewed, talking to the Nick Arcade, talking about butchering video game. Oh man, we've just gone like so haywire with this. So let's just quickly talk about Nickelodeon shows from the 80s.
You know, it's funny because a lot of the shows from the 80s, not a lot of people are familiar with.
Exactly. I mean, there were so many that I didn't even know existed. Like, a show that I really found surprising that I didn't even know existed in the 80s was The Third Eye, the anthology series before Are You Afraid of the Dark?
You don't just get 2 eyes, you get 3 eyes.
Woo! We're being scary.
Patty, don't ever do that again.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, I'm just joking with you.
Yeah, so The Third Eye was essentially acquired short TV series from England and New Zealand, and then they compilated it together into like one show. So let's just say, for example, there were 5 mini TV series that contained 7 episodes, and in each episode they would show 1 episode of that series, and then afterwards they would go on to the next one. So that was what The Third Eye was about.
So I'm sure they got some questions that they want to ask our beloved fans. They want to know what happened when we met Cheryl Blaylock. Cheryl, say it for me, Patty.
Cheryl Blaylock.
There you go.
Okay, well, yeah, that'd be great. Let's see, it was when...
I remember when we saw her, you were so nervous that your hands got so clammy, and you were pacing back and forth, and you were saying, "Oh my God, I don't think she's going to talk to us." You thought it was a hoax.
I
and
did.
Then when she came, and then you saw her, and then like your face lit up like a Christmas tree, wanting to be lit up on December.
Yeah, it was, and I was so excited to meet up with her. It was just so amazing for her to, meet up with Eureka face to face, and then we spent like over an hour and a half talking about Muppets, and we talked about what was it like being on, Nickelodeon Studios doing the filming, and all the other people who were working on the show, and then there was that story that she told us more in full detail, which is on R.L. Stein's autobiography.
Yeah.
The story
She said she said a lot of interesting things, like behind the scenes about Carol Spinney and Steve Whitmire.
Right, and not to mention that she was going to actually write a couple of the episodes.
Yeah. One of them being an I Dream of Jeannie tribute.
Yeah, in which Eureka has a cousin who comes over, and the cousin looks just like her, and apparently she's the wizard who gets everything right, and she gets all the spells right, and everybody is so in love with her, and Eureka feels left out.
Including Patty.
Including me. And that's sad.
Oh, it's not so sad, Patty. So you like the wizard. You like her more than you like Eureka. Big deal.
What can I say? I'm just so picky.
Nah, you're not picky. You're my brother.
Yes, Wait, what?
I caught you.
Well, I'm glad that you did. And for that, you get a cookie.
What kind of cookie? Are we talking about... We're not talking about the ones that have the eggshells in it that you make, right?
No. Well, yes, but I was going to give you colored eggshells.
Oh, yeah? How come?
Oh, because you're special.
Okay. So the fans want to know.
Well, we still haven't finished our story with Cheryl, so...
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so Cheryl, we met Cheryl at Columbus Square in New York City, and we met up at the corner of some, I forget what the place was, and we sat there for about an hour and a half talking about many things, and then at one point she was actually going to be Abby Cadabby from Sesame Street.
I would have loved for her to be Abby Cadabby.
Yeah, that would have been great. And she claimed that it was the worst audition she had ever had.
Yeah, why was it worst again? Tell them why it was bad.
The reason why it was the worst was because they were dealing with puppet techniques that she wasn't familiar with. It was still kind of experimental and brand new. And so she just showed up there clueless on what she was doing. And then it just basically, she only had that one shot. And then afterwards... they just decided to get some girl from California, and then they just decided to hire her anyway. So yeah, that's why Cheryl calls it the worst audition she's ever had, because the equipment was faulty. It was really uncomfortable working with the puppet, and she felt like she could have done better if they would have done it the way that she was trained to do it, as opposed to like this newfangled stuff. And that newfangled stuff was experimental anyway.
Oh, Patty.
Alright, so yeah, that was Cheryl. Okay, so then afterwards, the 80s were gone, we had the 90s, and we pretty much know that it pretty much ruled. It gave its own identity, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, the 90s had its own aurora around it because you had so many great shows.
Yeah. What would you say is the very first show that you saw, that you can recall in your mind?
Well, I remember when Doug came out, and Ren and Stimpy, and Rugrats, and Clarissa Explains It All. So I'd have to say it was those four shows.
And they came out on the same year, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. There were plethora of shows that came out in 1991. I've stated this over and over again throughout the tribute that 1991 was the most important year for Nickelodeon, because all of the classic shows that we know from Nickelodeon was released that year. Doug, Ren and Stimpy, Rugrats, What Would You Do, Clarissa Explains It All, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Salute Your Shorts. They were all released that year.
Oh, yeah.
But then there are shows that people have forgotten about. Welcome Freshmen, 15. They don't remember those shows.
Oh man, well, tell them about those shows.
Welcome Freshmen was a teen sitcom that came out in 1991. It was actually the very first show that came out in 1991. It was basically a bunch of high schoolers who would go through their freshman year, and that's pretty much it. The one thing that differentiated Welcome Freshmen from all the other shows about high school was that it had skits in between.
What was that about?
The skits would contain a theme, just like you can't do that on television, and they would talk about things like money or dating or something like that.
Which was the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger stripping on the show?
That was America Goes Bananas.
I mean, you saw that. You said you were shocked.
I was. You could actually see the review of America Goes Bananas. You can see the video of it. I have a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger taking off his shirt and dancing like a stupid dance in front of all the kids who are watching it. It's like, wow, this is for kids?
What was your reaction when you saw that?
I was like, whoa, I didn't even know a show like this existed in Nickelodeon. But then again, it was 1979.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's see. And other shows that came out during the 90s were obviously, let's see, you had The Adventures of Pete and Pete, you had Legends of the Hidden Temple, Rocko's Modern Life, you had Hey Arnold, you had Cat Dog.
What Nickelodeon show scared you the most?
The Nickelodeon show that scared me the most? Well, when I was younger, a lot of shows from Are You Afraid of the Dark did scare me. But
like
looking,
what?
let's see, I think the one episode that really did frighten me was, there was a monster that would actually haunt you in your shadows. I couldn't find that episode online when reviewing Are You Afraid of the Dark, but it kind of creeped me out. It was like, I was pretty much scared of my shadow since then.
Okay.
What episode did scare? I know that the episode that scared you was the episode that ended up in your number 2 list, in which they moved in. The family moves into the house, and when they go into the basement, it was like some mysterious spirit of the dead uncle who ended up eating a lot of evil people, and then if you feed the evil spirit of the uncle, then you get to be having whatever you wanted. And the kid actually fed the bully to the evil spirit, and he got himself a new bike.
That was my second scariest moment in Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, remember number 1 was about Zeebo the Clown?
Oh, I didn't remember that.
You said that Zeebo the Clown frightened you. In fact, that's your favorite episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh yeah, I love that episode. It's a great episode.
Yeah, it is. Even though it's not part of...
What would you do if Zeebo was sitting right in front of you?
Well, I'm not afraid of clowns, so I wouldn't be too afraid of him.
Even if he told you to give me all your money?
Yeah. Okay, so... Let's see. Then, the one thing that I've actually noticed throughout the tribute was that a lot of people keep complaining that Nickelodeon started going really downhill around the 2000s, saying that as soon as 2000 hit, the show sucked and it was low quality and stuff like that. What do you think?
What do you mean? It depends. I mean, it depends on what shows you're talking about. I mean, there are some shows that were bad, like What Ugly Martians and The Brothers Flub.
Well, The Brothers Flub came out in 99, so it doesn't count.
Yeah. But, I mean, there was some good shows in 2000s. What are some of your favorite good shows, Patty?
The 2000s? My favorite shows in the 2000s are, let's see, Caitlin's Way, obviously. Caitlin's Way, I believe, is the most underrated teen sitcom that ever showed there. And it's Thomas W. Lynch's best work. And As Told by Ginger is another favorite of mine. I love My Life as a Teenage Robot. I really enjoy...
Favorite episode?
Of My Life as a Teenage Robot, I haven't decided yet. I'm thinking about maybe doing a top 10 list of my favorite Teenage Robot episodes, but I'm still kind of looking through more episodes. I'm still not quite done with it.
We interviewed Candy Milo.
Yes, we interviewed Candy Milo. Yes, it was so nice.
What was one thing that made you laugh about Candy Milo?
I loved her. I love cheese. Yes, I love her, and I also just love her versatility in her voice acting.
What was I remember you told her that she played. Remember the show Rupert?
Was she in Rupert?
Yeah, I remember you told her she was in Rupert. She played that dog that shrunk the professor. And she was like laughing, and she was like, "I can't believe you remember that."
I think so. I believe I remember that. You asked a couple of questions about Lunatics Unleashed and Santo Boquito.
Yeah, I remember that?
Yes, she said that, the show was really ahead of its time because Santo Boquito came out 3 years before A Bug's Life and Ants.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was also questions about Cool World.
Oh, tell the audience about Cool World.
Okay. This is coming from both our interview with her and her interview with Rob Paulson's Talkin' Tunes. If you want to check that out, my website is robpaulsonlive.com, and you should be able to find the interview with her and Candy Milo. Anyway, so she was 8.5 months pregnant with her daughter Gabby, and she felt really heavy, she felt really hot. It was August, and she was doing the voices of all these characters, especially Nanette, who was the main love protagonist of Brad Pitt's character. Supposed to be like the blonde version of Jessica Rabbit.
No, you're talking. No, see. No, she didn't know. The blonde version of Jessica Rabbit was Hollywood. She played the black-haired brunette woman who was Brad Pitt's love interest.
Right. I forgot. Anyway, so then there was like one part in which while she was voicing the character, she was getting really hot, and she grabbed an Evian bottle, and then the producer's like, oh, no, that's for Kim Basinger's hair. And there she is, like, all hot, all sweaty, pregnant. And then she's like, you know what, from 1980 whatever to the day, even to today, I have not seen a single movie that Kim Basinger's been in. And even when we discussed about what was it like working with Brad Pitt and Gabriel Byrne and Kim Basinger, she was like, oh, Brad Pitt was the loveliest man ever, Gabriel Byrne was amazing, and Kim Basinger was just meh.
By the way, that meh came from Patty. She's trying to be a voice actress.
No. Candy Milo herself said that Kim Basinger was meh.
Basinger.
Whatever. I'm sure Candy Milo would be happy to know that we said her name incorrectly. Okay, so basically there were a lot of shows that came out in the 90s that I feel has not held up, and I wrote a very controversial topic and article saying 90s Nickelodeon classic are overrated, and I stated that some of the shows, there are some that are really good, and then there's some that aren't. And, for some reason or another, they are really underwhelming, they're outdated, and they're really stupid.
Well, Patty, which ones are stupid? You gotta tell us, man.
Well, I said that I hated the concept of 100 Deeds for Eddie McDowd. Everybody in that show was bland, boring, forgettable. The only characters that were memorable were Eddie and the Drifter. So let's quickly discuss about our questions, and then we'll get to our final word. So, yes. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions from our fans and from our friends at Manic Expression. Our first question comes from Big Black Hat Man, and he said, yes, the man with the big black hat. And he says, what was the single most creative installment you ever viewed, or in other words, what was the most original? It didn't have to be the best, but it was new at the time.
Go ahead, Patty. You take you start off with this one because know you have a lot of questions. By the way, Patty does a killer Kermit the Frog impression.
No, I don't.
Can you do it for us?
I don't do Kermit the Frog. When have you ever heard me say that?
Just do it real quick. I want the audience to hear your amazing voice talent.
It's not amazing.
Just do it.
Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here with the podcast with Kevin Guglielmo. How's it going? It's not easy being green. Okay, so answering the question, Big Black Hat Man, while making myself look like a fool, one of the most creative shows I feel have not held up. Obviously, Are You Afraid of the Dark was very creative. It came out before Goosebumps, but at the same time, it came out during the time of Tales from the Crypt, in which a lot of people say it's a watered-down version of. But the reason why was because it was never meant to be scary. It was meant to be thrilling. DJ McHale inspired Are You Afraid of the Dark from Alfred Hitchcock Presents in Twilight Zone, which is why it's very thrilling. That was very creative, but like I said, it hasn't aged very well. Another show that I feel is very creative is The Secret World of Alex Mack. That show is very creative because it has a girl with powers and is trying to be relatable, but it didn't focus on that enough, and that show is underwhelming by today's standards. And then there's also Roundhouse. Roundhouse was a sketch comedy show that came out in the 90s that nobody remembers of. Everybody remembers about all that in The Amanda Show. It was supposed to be improv for kids, but the show is so awful because the jokes are boring, they go too quickly, they were awkward, the acting was awful, everything about it was bad.
I thought you liked Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, I do. I'm answering the question about what shows were really creative.
Oh, okay.
What about yours?
I think it would have to definitely be Rocko's Modern Life, only because of the fact that it actually tried to push the envelope of having a show for kids, like Ren and Stimpy, that has like adult jokes, you know, and like Ren and Stimpy, I think they were both very creative shows because, you know, Ren and Stimpy, see, back before the 90s, there wasn't a lot of shows, let's just say, that had fart jokes and poo jokes and pee jokes. So I give Ren and Stimpy a lot of credit for that, even though it's gross humor.
It was actually one of the very first shows that did that, actually. I mean, The Simpsons didn't have its own identity yet. It was there, but it wasn't like a standpoint in which it is today.
And when did Beavis and Butthead come out? Because I know they were doing the gross humor, too.
Beavis and Butthead came out in 1993. Yes, Rocko's Modern Life and Legends of the Hidden Temple also came out in 1993.
Yeah.
And also the Power Rangers.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yes.
So, and definitely Doug.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, because it was a show that was from a point of view of a kid, of a teenager, and you really didn't get that many shows like that.
Yeah, especially around the 80s, in which it was trying to be all commercialized. It's like it's trying to hype up the latest toy, like Transformers and G.I. Joe and stuff like that. Having an animated show like Doug was something unheard of.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
And also, there's Rugrats. There was no other show like Rugrats.
Oh, yeah, Rugrats. What was your favorite Rugrats episode?
Oh, wow. Jeez. We didn't even do a top 10 Rugrats episode.
We were supposed to, but you didn't get a chance to do it.
I know. I think my favorite episode would have to be Reptar on Ice.
Why Reptar on Ice?
Because even though that Reptar was pretty much starting to become like a more iconic character with, let's say, you know, we had the Reptar cereal, the Reptar chocolate bar, the Reptar toy, but Reptar on Ice was the one that cemented the character as a whole. And you had the Reptar on Ice songs, and everything about it was just so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody can tell you that the one episode that they remember for Reptar is definitely Reptar on Ice.
Why do you think Reptar is such a popular Nickelodeon character?
I think because he was trying to be an homage to Godzilla, and maybe Godzilla was starting to build popularity around the 90s, especially in America.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
If Reptar came to your house and he picked you up, what would you do?
I would be scared shitless.
Really? Why?
Because he's a dinosaur. He's scary. What do you think?
Well, what if he just wanted to shake the crap out of you?
No, I have you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so next question comes from Ratinator, our buddy from New Zealand.
Oh, Ratinator! Woo!
And he says, what makes Nickelodeon... Yes.
Wait, how do you say his name? Ratinator?
I think it's Ratinator. There's Ratin, and then it has the number 8, and then Tor.
Ratinator. Oh, sorry, I called him Ratinator. Sorry, dude.
That's okay. He says, what makes... Anyway, the question is, what makes Nickelodeon better, worse, or most fundamentally different from Disney?
Well, when Nickelodeon bought the franchise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they really put them out there. Unlike what they did with the Muppets, or they really didn't give them much light, I should say. They're they know how to take care of their properties. They know how to take care of their franchises. To
some extent.
What makes them different than Nickelodeon is that they were the ones that started the whole, poop and gross jokes. And Disney, look, I'm not disrespecting Disney. Disney has some very, it's very hard to distinguish them because they both have different animation. I mean, it all depends if you're talking about the Disney Channel or you're talking about Disney movies.
I think maybe that's what he was referring to.
Yeah, but I mean, Disney is brilliant on their own. I mean, come on, they have Phineas and Ferb, and with all due respect, and I'm going to be very honest, that's a groundbreaking show. I mean, it's a very good show. Yeah, you also said that Phineas and Ferb is one of the best shows that came out for this generation. Oh, it definitely is. In my opinion, it is because, I think it's definitely one of the best shows that came out of this generation. Yeah, and it was made by Dan Poffenmeyer and Jeff Swampy Marsh, who were two guys who worked on Rocko's Modern Life. Did you say you want to go into a swamp? No. I said Dan Poffenmeyer and Jeff Swampy Marsh are the creators of Phineas and Ferb, and they were helping... Oh, you said you wanted to go in a swamp. I was like, why would you want to go in a swamp? Well, trust me, we don't have swamps in Florida. We have marshes, and trust me, they're not exactly... Martians? No, marshes. Oh, I thought you said Martians. No, this isn't Roswell, Kev. Okay, so next question comes from Infamous Jack. And he says, going back... Yes. Going back and rewatching all the old shows, which one surprised you the most on how poorly it has aged? And which ones have aged the best? Oh, Patty. That's all you, babe. Okay. Obviously, the shows that have poorly aged the most is obviously Hey Dude, and Your Roundhouse is poorly aged. Let's see what other shows poorly aged. Alex Mack is poorly aged. And why Alex Mack? I thought that was your favorite show. No, it was at one point, but then when watching it again, as I said many times before, it's outdated, it's underwhelming, they didn't utilize the concept the way it should have been, which is why it's number 2 on the top 10 Nickelodeon shows that I want to see remade. Because why would you want to see it remade for? Because I love the concept. The concept of having a regular girl having supernatural, mysterious powers given to her by chemicals from a chemical plant that wants to release the chemical plant as a weight loss drug, and the woman who runs the chemical plant happens to control the entire town, and she wants to find Alex, that way they can be able to stop her from telling the police about it. But the problem is that we don't even get all of that to integrate it. It's mostly about Alex trying to fit into everyday high school life, like trying to get a boy to notice her and getting her driver's license and stuff like that. She rarely uses her powers, and if she does, she only uses it for good and stuff like that. The only time in which it does start becoming really, really good and utilizing its concept is around the 3rd season, and by then it was already too late. Around that time, shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Felicity, and Buffy came out. So moving on with the questions, another show that has poorly aged for me was... Well, let's see. A lot of the shows that Klasky Csupo released around the late 90s, they were trying to capitalize on what was popular at the time, like Rocket Power and the Wild... Okay. Yeah, some of those, remember around the late 90s in which skateboarding was really popular due to Tony Hawk doing the 900 and the X Games and the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series? Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Klasky Csupo, when creating Rocket Power, tried to capitalize on the popularity of that, and that's when Rocket Power came out. I didn't really like Rocket Power that much. The only people who did were people who were fans of extreme sports. Are you a fan of extreme sports? I used to, but not really much anymore. I mean, after Tony Hawk retired, there's really not much to see in the world of extreme sports that impressed me. Like what? How come? I don't know. When Tony Hawk did the 900, which at the time was the most difficult trick to pull out, nobody else tried to do a trick that complicated as of now, I believe. Around the 2000s, it was all about Pierre-Luc Gagnon, and then there was Paul Rodriguez Jr. What did you say, Luke? Who's got a band?
Pierre-Luc Gagnon. He was a Canadian skateboarder.
Oh, I thought you said he had a really small schlong.
Wow. Our Skype is breaking up, that's for sure. And then there was the Wild Thornberrys, which I feel is a little bit overrated in my opinion.
Why do you say that?
Well, the reason why is because some of the characters I really don't like, and some of the episodes do tend to drag on and become a little bit boring. The only time in which it starts getting really exciting is when they meet up with the animal, and then Eliza tries to help out and interact with it. She feels that just because she has these powers, she thinks that she knows it all. And first of all, her family does, does a nature show. The number one rule when doing any nature show or documentary is that you have to leave the animals alone. You can't save them or you can't help them unless it's like a real emergency, because you're supposed to let things go. Nature is nature sucks sometimes. Sometimes you have to see an animal get eaten or starve to death or wander off from its family. That's part of life. A documentarist or a person who's running a nature show cannot interact, and Eliza does this all the time. Also, according to Ratinator's review on the episode in which they reach New Zealand, the Wild Thornberrys gets everything about New Zealand wrong.
What do you mean?
The creatures that are there, the look of New Zealand, everything about it is wrong, according to what he says, and he feels that it's so laughably just bad, in which they try to represent New Zealand in a very incorrect manner. That's the thing. I mean, there were, Rocket Power also had an episode that took place in New Zealand. It seems that New Zealand must have been like a huge thing for Klasky Chupo.
Yeah, maybe they got married there.
I don't think so. I don't think they got married in New Zealand. But then again,
Well, didn't you say that you wanted to always go to New Zealand?
I do, actually. That was where they filmed the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah, that's where Peter Jackson is from.
So, okay. So, yeah, those are a lot of the shows that age the best. The shows that have aged the best for me, in my opinion, are obviously Legends of the Hidden Temple. In fact, that's my favorite game show in Nickelodeon, because it has aged so well. Looking at it is just as exciting and just as captivating as it was when it was first released.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely, because all the other questions are outdated, especially Double Dare. If you were to introduce a kid to Double Dare, he's not going to know any questions based on any of the movies that came out at the time, or the celebrities, or anything like that. And it's boring, too. It just drags on and on and on, and you're just praying that the physical challenge comes along. Questions that focus on pop culture references outdate the show a lot, and Legends of the Hidden Temple did not do that. That is probably the best age game show that Nickelodeon has ever had, in my opinion. And what show, and also As Told by Ginger has aged very well, and Hey Arnold has aged very well. Because, around the 2000s, you didn't see a lot of shows that connected towards, kids as much, like regular, average, normal kids who just go to school and just hang out. And seeing a show that connects you in a way, and it's surprisingly heavy with its serious themes, it's something that you can really relate to and you can really connect with. And I find that to be really refreshing, as opposed to like today's shows in which they're really realistic and the characters are basically idiots and they're all cliche. So, yeah, that's what I have to say. What about you, Kevin?
What about me? What show? Well, that's hard. That's a really tough call, because to be quite honest with you, shows that age poorly.
Yes.
I really hate to say this because it's one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows and also one of my favorite shows, but I would have to say Doug. And if you watched the first season of Doug, the animation was horrendous. And I don't know if this was the intentions of Jim Jenkins or if this was just, budget-wise, but it was very much a very like poorly animated in the very first few episodes. Another one I thought that aged very poorly was the later episodes of Ren and Stimpy. The drawings in that, like the animation towards the end, was just awful. I mean, it wasn't even the same style as the original animator, even though he was fired. Who also was the voice of Ren.
John Kay, yes.
Yeah, John Kay. I mean, the later season, even though John Kay left, it tried very hard to stay in the same vein as his animation, but it was just so awful,
Yeah, also another show that has aged poorly is, in a way, it kind of ages poorly because of what they discussed about and what were some of the popular things, but it ages well because of the message, is Clarissa Explains It All.
Why would you say that?
Clarissa Explains It All, when you look at it, it is so 90s. The clothes that she would wear, the fact that she was a huge fan of bands like They Might Be Giants, and the computer games that she would play online, in which it was like all 8-bit.
You know, it's actually very funny you talk about Clarissa Explains It All, because you know, it's funny because even though it was more geared to a female audience, a demographic, I actually thought it was very appealing because it also was, she not only broke the fourth wall, she was talking to adults too.
Yeah.
I really liked that show.
A lot of guys did, actually. A lot of guys were into Clarissa Explains It All.
Well, it was also because they thought she was cute and all that, but I thought I liked it for the fact that there was some intelligence behind it.
Yeah, something that you don't see in today's shows, right?
Today's shows, you have these little kids, and they sing and everything, and they try to make, it's definitely Clarissa Explains It All was a one-of-a-kind show, which unfortunately they don't do anymore.
Right, and but besides those things that date the show, I mean, it still holds up very well because it's trying to connect towards teenagers. I mean, Clarissa is a real teenager. She goes through everyday struggles. She goes through lots of problems, and it's sort of like a time capsule of what a kid in the 90s would be. So
yeah, I would agree with you on that. I would agree with you on that. The thing is that I would also say that it also tried to, it was just one of those shows where you had a character always break the fourth wall.
Yeah, as opposed to another show that came out in the 90s which starred a female character, Blossom.
Yeah, well, Blossom, that was another great show in the 90s that you had. The 90s had its good share of good TV shows.
Yeah, it had its share of good ones and bad ones, just like any other decade would. It's just that, a lot of people tend to, focus on the 90s one, which we'll get to in a minute, by the way. That's actually one of the questions. But, yeah, Legends of the Hidden Temple has aged very well. Caitlin's Way has aged very well. Ren and Stimpy has aged awesomely because a lot of shows are trying to capitalize on that whole concept of what it did over 20 years ago.
Yeah, but the later seasons really blew. The animation was so bad.
Well, obviously because John Kay left.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the way they drew was just like it was like a 5-year-old drew that. I mean, when they drew a character's foot, they drew just little bubbles. They didn't even go really all into detail. It was disgusting.
Well, they did have different animators that you can be able to tell that each one of them were differently drawn by different people.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, I haven't talked to the author yet, who is going to be writing the unauthorized book of Ren and Stimpy, but...
Oh, yeah, that asshole. Yeah.
No, not the asshole. Somebody else.
Oh, somebody's doing a book on Ren and Stimpy?
Yeah, just exclusively on Ren and Stimpy. Not the asshole who's going to be writing a book about Nickelodeon when it first started all the way up to the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, when we ask him questions, he says you just had to read the book. So the book better be good if he wants us to find out all these questions. Yeah,
I'm not going to mention his name as of yet, but Kevin doesn't really like him. In fact, it's actually his least favorite interview.
Oh yeah, it was very pointless. When we wanted to ask him questions, his only response was read the book. Read the book, read the book. And we're like, well, what if we don't want to read the book,
I don't know. I think his book might do very well.
We got to see about that. Yeah. Is he going to cover the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, he's only covering from the 80s to the 90s, not all the way up to today.
Okay.
Yeah, he's covering the Jerry Laybourne years. That is what he called it.
The who years?
Jerry Laybourne was the very first president of Nickelodeon.
Oh.
When she came in, it was around the 80s, and then Jerry Laybourne left at around 1996. She worked in the Disney Channel, and then around 2000, she left and became the founder of Oxygen.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then around 2004, a woman named Sigma Ziramzi or something like that became the president. And this is where a lot of people feel that the direction of it completely changed. In fact, many people say, oh, the 2000s sucked because of the show. It's like, no, not only that, but it also changed direction because the president was different.
You know, I really hate to say this because it's one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows and also one of my favorite shows, but I would have to say Doug. And if you watched the first season of Doug, the animation was horrendous. And I don't know if this was the intentions of Jim Jenkins or if this was just, budget-wise, but it was very much a very like poorly animated in the very first few episodes.
Hey, dude, definitely. Hey, dude, that is Patty's favorite show.
No, it's not. In fact, it's my least favorite Nickelodeon sitcom, teen series, whatever you call it.
Now, why is it? We have to tell them why we don't like it.
Where do I start? The acting is awful, first of all. It's portrayed really cheesy. The sets are very bland. The characters are cliched and stereotypical. Everything about that show sucks. I mean, the only thing that people remember from that show are two things. The opening song and the fact that Christine Taylor was in the show.
Yeah, didn't you say you were trying to get her to interview? We were trying to interview her?
I really tried, but I couldn't get a hold of her. I mean, come on, she's the wife of Ben Stiller. What do you think?
Huh?
What shows have aged the best?
Definitely Ren and Stimpy.
Mm-hmm.
I think the later seasons of Rocco definitely aged. No, the earliest seasons, I should say. Definitely Doug. Oh man, Doug.
A lot of people don't like Doug.
I don't know why. I really don't know why, because
I think it has mostly to do with the Nostalgia Critic's review of Doug when he talked about Nickelodeon, in which he said it was boring and bland and the characters were very basic.
Oh yeah, because he's such a very exciting guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very exciting guy, so he has a lot of stories to tell.
Yes, I'm sure he does. Okay, so is that all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question comes from one of the newest members of Manic Expression, Ryan McCarthy. He says...
Manic Expression, Ryan.
Yes, welcome to Manic Expression, Ryan. What are your favorite and least favorite Nicktoons?
My favorite Nicktoons currently is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which we'll get to later on. But if I had to talk about Nickelodeon exclusive shows, definitely Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, Rocco, Rocco's Modern Life, Our Real Monsters, Cat Dog, Angry Beavers, SpongeBob SquarePants. Actually, that's my current favorite Nickelodeon show. Jimmy Neutron, The Fairly Odd Parents. Not so much a Danny Phantom fan. I do like Danny Phantom. I have a lot of respect for that show. Couldn't say I'm not a diehard fan. But I love Danny. I mean, the show itself, I know that sounds hypocritical, but Invader Zim, hands down Invader Zim. I also like a lot of Nicktoons exclusive shows, which is on their sister channel, like Kappa Mikey and The Secret Show, which we'll get to eventually. And I also like Wild and Monster. At first I didn't like that show, but I learned to like it, and Fanboy and Chum Chum.
Don't forget about Yakety Yak.
Yeah, Yak. Well, actually, Yakety Yak was it only aired once on Nickelodeon. Actually, no, like 3 or 2 times. That actually was in the Australia Nickelodeon channel. It was actually, which was really weird. It aired it only in Australia and Canada. It was a Canadian TV show that was on the Nickelodeon in Canada, and then they wanted to bring it to the States, and it wasn't very popular in the States. I liked because it was the reason why the show, the draw off from that. I'm sorry for asking that question, but it's a little interesting about Yakety is that the show did poorly because they said that it was trying too hard to with the fart and the poop and the pee jokes and the throw up jokes, and it was just such a bizarre show. If anybody could watch it, I recommend it because it is so fucking weird. I mean, you have a pineapple, who an animorphic, I can't say that, a pineapple with arms and legs. His father lives in a fruit bowl, yakety, and then it was a very, very weird show. Guy, what's yours?
Okay, my favorites. My favorites are Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy.
You like that.
Yes. There's Our Real Monsters. I was also a huge fan of Hey Arnold.
Hey Arnold, that's another one of my favorite shows.
There was, let's see. I was also a huge fan of Kablam. Soul by Ginger. I really enjoyed Chalk Zone. My Life as a Teenage Robot. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Avatar.
Yes, Avatar: The Last Airbender. And today's, let's see what else. I've seen Kappa Mikey a couple of times. I thought it was okay when she was trying to riff off anime, which was hugely popular at the time.
Well, it didn't really rip off anime. What it was trying to do was actually trying to parody anime, because what they did was each episode had a homage to anime, so it really wasn't knocking it. It was just trying to do a parody of it. Very similar to Roger Rabbit, where Mikey was traditionally drawn as an American cartoon and everybody was as all anime.
Right.
Which I thought was pretty cool. And Sean, and it had a lot of, and what I also thought was really cool was it had a good amount of anime voice actors. It had Sean Schimmel, who played Leonard, and it had a lot of other people on that show. So it was very good. It was a very good show. My own complaint was I didn't like the artist, the creator of that show, Larry Schwartz. He did this. I forgot what it was. It was on Nickelodeon, and then they put it on Nicktoons. This Italian, a Western set in Italy, and there was this Italian kid, and it wasn't really racist. I mean, there was some stereotypical Italian stuff, but it was just very weird. And it was actually the first time in one episode that they actually showed recently, and they probably did it before. They showed human shit. They showed a kid picking up crap. And it was a really weird show. It was a short that they add in between cartoons, and I don't know. And he also was responsible for Speed Race of the Next Generation, which I thought was an abomination to Speed Race, but I was just,
Well, we'll get to our least favorite later. Finishing up my favorites, there's also Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius.
Yeah.
And my current favorites as of now are The Legend of Korra and current Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Okay, now for our least favorite Nicktoons. Kevin?
My least favorite Nicktoons. Legend of Korra.
Oh, the Korra fans are gonna find you and chase you down.
You know what it is? I'm joking. I actually never seen an episode of Legend of Korra, so I can't say that. However, I'm just joking around with that. No, Legend of Korra is not my least favorite cartoon show, and that'd be very stupid of me to say I don't like it when I haven't even watched an episode of it. Least favorite Nickelodeon shows, I will say, is All Grown Up, which I thought was really, really, really stupid, and I didn't like the show's own lingo that they used. Let's see, what other? Honestly say, I wouldn't say I hate it. I never got into Rocket Power. I don't know why. It was a good show. It was pretty good, but I didn't really get into it. I know that doesn't answer your question.
Well, that's okay, because a lot of people didn't really get into Rocket Power either, unless...
Speed Race of the Next Generation I didn't like. I didn't like that show at all. Let's see, what else I didn't like. That's pretty really much. I mean, I know there's a bunch of other shows. Um, I, you know, I really wasn't a big fan. Well, it's really hard because there's more live action shows on Nickelodeon that I don't like, aside from animation. I mean, you can't put Legend of Korra and iCarly in the same category.
No, you can't.
Avatar, or put Robot and Monster with Victorious. So, I mean...
No, you can't. Let's see, the least favorite Nicktoons for me. All Grown Up is one of them. I think that Cat Dog is very mean-spirited, and most of the characters are...
mean-spirited?
Well, the majority of the characters are jerks. I mean, Cliff is a jerk. Cat is occasionally a jerk. Rancid Rabbit is a jerk. Winslow's a jerk.
The whole... Not really. It's not a... No. First of all, the whole point of the show... first of all, Cliff is the leader of the Greasers, which are bullies, which is actually a homage to 1950s, leather, the Greasers from the 1950s, which I thought was pretty cool to put that in a late 90s cartoon.
You mean The Outsiders by S.E. Hilton?
Not really. Well, yeah. I mean, that was influenced from the 50s, too, but... And then you had the bunny...
Rancid Rabbit, yeah.
Yeah, Rancid Rabbit. He was the main antagonist on the show. And there really wasn't any villains. Winslow was just your typical, he's such a pain in the ass, which I love him. So it really didn't have that many villains. It wasn't a show. There were villains on the show, but, that was just... It wasn't mean-spirited at all.
Well, in my opinion, it was. Anyway, I'm continuing on with the list. Pelswick is another one that I found to be really disappointing.
Oh, man, Patty, you and Pelswick, man. You hate that show, man, with a passion.
That show had the potential to be so great. I mean, if you actually look at John Callahan's original work, I mean, if he would have taken the route that Jonah Vasquez did with Invader Zim, Pelswick would have been one of the best shows that Nickelodeon had ever had. And at the end, it turned out to be a boring, stereotypical, cliched cartoon that they had pretty forgettable characters, and the only characters that were memorable were the grandmother and Pelswick's guardian angel, Mr. Jimmy.
Didn't you say you went for an audition for Mr. Jimmy?
Yeah. I went to an audition for Mr. Jimmy when I was 13, and it didn't turn out very well. And then there are also two other shows that a lot of people don't seem to mention as, some of the worst cartoons that ever was on Nickelodeon, and that would be The Brothers Flub and Butt Ugly Martians.
I gotta tell you, though, even though Butt Ugly Martians wasn't very good, it had a very successful toy line.
Yeah, but so did Transformers.
Patty, Transformers is a classic. I said that even though the show sucked, it had a very good toy line. Transformers, the animated show, is a classic.
Well, it tried to make a lighter, softer tone for Invader Zim. Instead of the whole gross, dark comedy, let's have light comedy with terrible CGI and really stupid, cliched, forgettable characters, and a show that promises action, but it just falls flat. Nobody seems to remember that show, and I'm surprised that out of all the top 10s that I've read or I've seen an article saying of what's the worst Nicktoon, a lot of people say that Fanboy and Chum Chum is the worst.
Really? Why did they say that?
The reason why is because it's so overacting, it's so crazy, it doesn't make any sense, the jokes are lame. A lot of people hate that show.
Really?
Yeah, it's true. I must have seen 10 or 20 videos online of the top 10 worst Nicktoons, and Fanboy and Chum Chum have been at least either number 1 or number 2. But yeah, I think either number 1 or number 2 definitely deserves to be The Brothers Flub or Butt Ugly Martians.
Really? And you told me you like Butt Ugly Martians too.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, just watching it again, I remembered why I hated it.
And why do you hate it?
Everything is just so forgettable and bland, and the animation is so crappy looking, and it was just not very pleasant to watch. I mean, there was no appealing factor to anybody who would watch this show. You're not going to like the characters, you're not going to like the scenario, you're not going to like the animation, you're not going to like anything with this show. I mean, at least there's like one good quality about it, and there was nothing.
Well, you told me you were very obsessed with that show for like some time, and I remember when we were kids, you actually had an action figure of them.
What are you talking about? I wasn't allowed to have those kind of toys when I was younger. And the show came out in 2002. I was too old to have something like that.
No, you weren't. You told me you had all those action figures. What did you do? You sold them?
Yes, I sold them to some sucker for $30 so I can get my college degree paid off.
Well, I didn't know you were such a Big Brothers Club fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Another show that I really disliked, Nicktoon that I really disliked, was El Tigre.
Why?
El Tigre was trying to capitalize on the popularity of Mucha Lucha. And what it came across of it is just, it didn't know what it wanted to be. It was supposed to be about a kid who wanted to be either a superhero or a villain. And you had like these two opponents. You had the father who was the hero and you had the grandfather who was the villain. And, you know, it wasn't really cohesive. And then there was Tak and the Power of Juju, which was based off a video game, and everything about it was bad. Bad writing, bad characters, bad scenarios, bad plots. Everything was bad.
But you used to play the video games all the time, and you said those were your favorite.
No way. I mean, Tak and the Power of Juju, it was a subpar video game. I thought it was okay, but I was too busy playing with, you know, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, and the Sly series on my PS2. I didn't have time to play Jak.
That's not what you told me.
Apparently, you were going deaf that day.
No, you told me you love Tak and the Power of Juju.
Absolutely not.
You don't remember that, do you?
Okay, next question. What show do you think got canceled too early?
Rocko's Modern Life, hands down.
It lasted for 3 seasons, though.
Should have lasted more, in my opinion.
How so?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It was a great show, and it was like the parents didn't like it because of the adult themes and all that stuff. It was a poor excuse. I also think Invader Zim was canceled way too early.
It was canceled in the 2nd season.
Exactly. They should have at least give it another season.
Okay, any live-action shows got canceled too early?
The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yeah, it only lasted 3 seasons.
I wish it would have lasted more. There were so many questions that needed to be answered.
I know, it did. Did you know that the Adventures of Pete and Pete had 3 reunions as of this year? One of them, when they sold their tickets, it was sold out in less than 5 minutes.
Really?
Yes, it's true.
Where were these reunions?
The reunions were mostly around like California and stuff like that, and there would be you would have like basically Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi, who were the creators. Danny Tamborelli was there, Mike Moreno was there, and then you had all the main characters from the show were there, including some of the writers, and they would talk and answer questions to the fans. And a lot of people have connected to it, and Will McRobb had said to them, "It's so amazing that a show about nostalgia can be able to connect with so many people. Nowadays, when looking at a show about nostalgia, you're being nostalgia about a nostalgic show. Because the show is basically about childhood and all the weird, crazy things that can happen to it." It's like every...
Didn't you say that you cried when you saw the season finale of Pete and Pete?
Yeah, I guess so, because it just kind of ended very ambiguously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what does ambiguous mean?
Ambiguous means it was kind of unsuspecting, anticlimactic. That's what it means.
Oh.
Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, my turn. Shows that got canceled too early. Shows that got canceled too early that were actually quite good. Let's see. I know that this is a guilty pleasure for me, but My Brother and Me was canceled after 1 season, and that show, looking back, it is the cheesiest shit you will ever see in your life.
That was your favorite show when we were kids.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, seriously, it wasn't. It was so cheesy. It was so over the top. None of the characters were memorable, with the exception of Goo. But I knew that they were trying really hard to bring variety and diversity into Nickelodeon, because it was the very first show that had an African-American cast.
What about Family Matters?
Nickelodeon, I said.
Oh.
Yeah, Family Matters. Of course, Family Matters. That's what everybody was watching. Nobody was watching My Brother and Me. They were all watching Family Matters.
What about the Jeffersons?
And then, of course, the Jeffersons and the Cosby Show and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And Martin, the Steve Harvey Show. There were a lot of shows back then that had an African-American cast.
The Patty Show.
I'm not black. Maybe I can be like that one white character. You know how in every African-American show there's always like one white character that's supposed to be stupid?
Yeah.
But I want to break the stereotype, and I actually want to be a smart character.
Well, why don't you be a Patty character?
There you go. Okay, so next question comes from Ryan McCarthy. And he says, what are your favorite and least favorite Nicktoons?
Go ahead, Pinks.
Okay, favorite Nicktoons are, obviously, let's see, Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, As Told by Ginger, Hey Arnold, My Life as a Teenage Robot, Avatar The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra. I like Chalk Zone a tiny bit. I mostly like it for the music and the creativity, but everything else is very mediocre at best. Sorry, Bill Burnett and Larry Huber.
Bill, I'm very mad at you.
Oh my god. Yes. When we interviewed Bill Burnett, the co-creator of Chalk Zone, he was so angry when I said, I was wondering if the show was inspired by Simon in the Land of Chalk Drawings, and he wrote in all caps lock saying, no, no, no. He was angry.
Because you had the wonderful... You had...
I couldn't help but ask that question, because a lot of people, when they ever review Chalk Zone, they say that it was inspired by Salmon in the Land of Chalk Drawings, and I had to know if that was true or not, and apparently it's not. So the people who are reviewing Chalk Zone, it's not inspired by Simon in the Land of Chalk Drawings. It's not.
Yeah, I'm going to get Bill Burnett after Patty, and Patty's actually a little scared right now, so...
Not anymore, I'm not scared. I mean, come on, Bill Burnett has written some of the most iconic music that came out in the 90s. He wrote Ugliest Weenie from Cow and Chicken, then there's Sail Cat. He wrote all the songs from Chalk Zone. I'm actually thinking about doing a top 10 favorite of Chalk Zone songs, because they were the best in my opinion.
Why do you think that?
Well, it's like what Bill Burnett said when he talked about why Chalk Zone is a very unique show, because he said that back in the 20s and 30s, cartoons were the reason why cartoons were created, like Fleischer's Betty Boop and all those characters and stuff like that, was because it was basically like musicals animated. So it was basically one of the last shows that contained something like this. You didn't see a lot of shows in which they would constantly have, like, music numbers. Okay, least favorite. Oh boy, here we go. Least favorite Nicktoons. Obviously, there's the Brothers Flub. There's But Ugly Martians. The Mighty Bee.
The Mighty Bee. That is such a ripoff. It's not even funny of just, like, Nickelodeon shows.
Yeah, I know. Then there's the X's. What else? My Dad the Rockstar was awful.
Why would you say that?
It tried to be... Remember, like, those 2000 shows in which the majority of the reality shows were has-been, washed-up celebrities trying to make a comeback, and they were having their own reality shows? And the number one popular show that came out during that time was The Osbournes.
Yeah.
I felt that My Dad the Rockstar was trying to capitalize on that popularity, and it just falls very flat. Even though the show was created and executive produced by Gene Simmons.
Yeah, you said that was your favorite show.
Again, stop with the favorites, Kevin. They focused on the one kid who's supposed to be the normal kid. And the normal kid looks bland, and he is bland. And his friends are bland. None of the characters were memorable. It was just very weird that a show would be like this. And then there's the X's, which try to capitalize on the Incredibles.
Oh, yeah. That's my least favorite Nickelodeon show, by the way.
Really? The X's?
I hate the X's.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, my least favorite would have to probably be a tie between Bud Ugly Martians and the Brothers Flub.
And Mighty B, I hate too.
Oh my god. Oh, awful.
Yep. Go ahead.
Alright. Next question comes from Sydney, and she asks, did the jazz themes of Hey Arnold make you appreciate the type of music more?
I thought it was very catchy, but it didn't make me appreciate it anymore. I just liked it. I just liked it for it just being itself. But I did like the theme songs. The catchy jazz theme songs were great because the whole show had a lot of jazz, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I would have to say the same thing, Sydney. Sorry, but I'm not really a jazz fanatic. I do like it, but I'm not too crazy about it. And I like that Arnold was a jazz person as opposed to like a rock and roll person or something like that. But yeah, it didn't make me appreciate it anymore. Next question.
I find it funny that he's a jazz person when in all the commercial photos of him he's playing air guitar.
Yeah, that is odd. Okay, next question comes from Brett Club 85, and he said, what was the scariest moment on any Nick show, animated or live action? Well, we already answered that question from Are You Afraid of the Dark? And from Legends of the Hidden Temple for me, so we already answered the question, so let's move on. Okay. Another question is, any Nick shows you liked as a kid but you don't like now, or vice versa?
Go ahead, Patty.
Obviously, the one show that I didn't like as a kid but I do like now is Nick News. I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, and looking at it now, I do appreciate what they're doing. They don't talk down to kids, they're trying to be serious, and I appreciate for what it's doing. I just wish I would have appreciated it when I was younger.
Cool.
And, let's see, the show that I did like as a kid but I don't like now... let's say that's a really tough one because there were a lot of shows when looking back I did find it disappointing. I think it would have to be The Secret World of Alex Mack. I mean, the reason why is because I loved that show as a kid. I thought it was really cool, but then looking back on it, it's so underwhelming. It's really outdated. It didn't push the concept the way it should have been. Same thing goes for Nick Arcade. Those shows are really flawed in my opinion. Okay, what about you? What show did you like as a kid that you don't like now?
Same thing, Nick News.
Okay, and vice versa. What show did you like as a kid but you don't like now?
Secret World of Alex Mack.
Oh, same thing. Okay. So we'll go to the next question. What is the best moment in an otherwise bad show, and what was the worst moment in an otherwise good show? Okay, the best moment in a bad show. Okay, let's see. I think the best moment in a bad show was when it was trying to be in the journey of Alan Strange. That is a really, really, really awful show that has a really bad identity crisis. The one thing that I really did like about it was that Robbie was a very, very well-developed character. She feels really sad that she's the only female in the house and she has to take care of her father and her brother. And she wants her mom and her dad to get back together, and they have really touching moments. I thought that was really nice. Worst moment in a good show. Oh my god, I would have to say when the Jungle movie from Hey Arnold didn't get picked up.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. Yeah, I agree with you totally on that.
I remember when I remember a few years ago in which I actually wrote to Craig Bartlett saying that I wanted the movie to get made, but it never happened. That's real.
Yeah,
it's really sad. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think that should be it for their questions. Now let's see what the other questions. The other questions come. Okay, one question is, what favorite and least favorite show that came out in the 80s?
Banana Man.
Banana Man being your favorite or least favorite?
Least favorite.
And favorite?
Count Duckula.
Okay. Mine, for me, my least favorite is Hey Dude. My most favorite is, I would have to say, Danger Mouse.
Did you ever watch an episode of Danger Mouse?
Yes, I had to watch about 14 of them, actually. It was really good, actually.
Really?
Mm-hmm. It's really good.
That's cool.
Okay. Favorite and least favorite Nickelodeon show of the 90s? What will it be, Kevin?
My favorite shows from the 90s, you mean?
Favorite show, least favorite show?
Okay, my favorite... I'll do a top 10. My favorite top 10 shows of Nickelodeon from the 90s. Are we doing 90s or from the whole era?
Well, we just finished talking about the 80s, so we're talking about the 90s now.
Okay, the 90s. My favorite... Okay, it would be Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, Rocco, Our Real Monsters, Angry Beavers, SpongeBob SquarePants. Let's see, and to do, I have 3 more to go. I said Hey Arnold and Angry Beaver. That's probably it. My least favorite show would have to be The Brothers Flub.
Ah, yes, The Brothers Flub.
I know how much that's your favorite.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's see, my favorite Nickelodeon show in the 90s. I'm going to say my favorite Nicktoon in the 90s. That's going to be really hard, but I'm going to have to go with it's a tie between either Hey Arnold or Rocko's Modern Life. Least favorite Nicktoon in the 90s, obviously, is The Brothers Flub. Favorite live-action show from the 90s? It would be a tie between Are You Afraid of the Dark and The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Least favorite...
Wait, you said Nickelodeon? Oh, you meant Nickelodeon show altogether?
Yes, I did.
Oh, man, you should forget that. I would say Doug, Rugrats. No, Doug. My favorite show would have to be Doug, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, Clarissa Explains It All. So many shows from the 90s that were good on Nickelodeon.
Yes, I would have to agree, and as you probably read from the article, 90s Nickelodeon classic or overrated, there are many of them that haven't aged very well.
Yep.
But a lot of people still stand strong about these shows that came out in the 90s as like the best decade. They always say that the 2000s was bad and that the 80s were practically nothing, since, they mostly say that they don't count because they were acquired from other sources. What do you think, Kev?
Repeat that again?
I said a lot of people have said that the 90s were the best years for Nickelodeon and that the 2000s went downhill, and that the 80s didn't matter because a lot of the shows were acquired from other sources. Do you agree with that? Yes or no?
I agree to that to a certain extent, only because the 90s was the start of Nickelodeon. It pretty much was the beginning of Nickelodeon's turn point, of where there was a lot of shows, and you had a plethora of shows that came out. But I mean, I wouldn't say the 2000s was generally bad because you had a lot of great shows there too. I mean, you had The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron. You had a lot of shows on that you can't necessarily say is bad. So I mean, it's a tough call. It's a tough call to say because you had some good shows and you had some bad shows. I wouldn't say that all of the shows in the 90s was bad.
I would have to agree. I mean, let's be honest. There, in some way, shape, or form, every decade has to have at least a slew of good shows and a slew of bad shows. As Infamous Jack once said, for every good show, there's always going to be 10 bad ones or 10 mediocre ones. In the Nickelodeon's case, there were a lot of shows that were great at the time, but a lot of them haven't aged very well. And I have to disagree with you slightly on what you said that the 90s was I do agree that the 90s was a starting point, but it started around during the mid-80s. When Fred Siebert and Alan Goodman took over. And
I mean that, but I'm just saying, like, a lot of people really don't remember the 80s that much of Nickelodeon. They mostly remember the 90s. I mean, the 80s was I agree totally, but it was more of the 90s.
Yes, the reason why is because People who grew up with Nickelodeon during the 70s and the 80s hated the 90s. The reason why was because Nickelodeon was presented itself very differently. Nickelodeon was trying to attract kids into more educational programs. A lot of the programs were mostly kids shows such as Today's Special and Pinwheel and Dusty's Treehouse, and you had shows like What Will They Think of Next and Mr. Wizard's World. They were trying to be very educational for kids.
Right.
And when everything started to come into fruition with all the shows that came out during the middle to late 80s, shows like Double Dare and a lot of the slew of mediocre game shows that try to capitalize it, like Think Fast, Make the Grade, and Finders Keepers. And then you had all the talk shows that came out, such as Total Panic and Kids Court. And then you had Hey Dude. So it slowly started to gain its identity around the 90s, that was when Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida first opened. That was when Nickelodeon Magazine first opened. That was when the trio of the Nicktoons that started happening. That was when shows such as Clarissa Explains It All, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, all these shows started to come out in gusts, and it was different from every other show that was showing at the time. Or it was trying to be a kid version of the popular shows at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I remember that it's a very tough call to say.
Yeah, and like I mentioned in my blog post, 90s Nickelodeon Classic or Overrated, there are some Nickelodeon shows from the 2000s that are good. For example, I still think that Caitlin's Way is the most underrated Nickelodeon sitcom that ever came out. As Told by Ginger is the most underrated Nicktoon. I really liked My Life as a Teenage Robot. I love Jimmy Neutron. I think Chalk Zone's okay, but I like the music more. I like the music and the concept more than the show itself. The show's pretty average. I really like... let's see. Avatar: The Last Airbender was the Nickelodeon show that brought me back to watching Nickelodeon again. And then you have shows like Ned's Declassified, and then you have the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. Cat Scratch was, I enjoyed Cat Scratch for what it was, and some of the movie-based TV shows like Jimmy Neutron and Back at the Barnyard and Penguins in Madagascar and Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness, they're pretty typical of what a movie based on a TV series based on a movie is going to be like. So what you see is what you're going to get with that. Of course, then again, that was when Dan Schneider became the king of Nickelodeon sitcoms, and he created Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, Unfabulous. He created iCarly and Victorious. And then everybody started to either copy him or the Disney Channel, which had Hannah Montana and all these other poppy, girly, all these rocks people. Big Time Rush was trying to capitalize on the whole boy band group, and the Naked Brothers band tried to copy off of the Jonas Brothers. It was, oh my god. I mean, when it comes to that, today's Nickelodeon teen sitcoms and the Disney Channel teen sitcoms, they're a mess. They're the exact same thing. I just wish that somebody would come by and do something completely different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it would be great, but,
I know. Life sucks. Alright, so next question. I already mentioned about Caitlin's Way, As Told by Ginger, as underrated. What do you think? What shows in Nickelodeon do you think are underrated and overrated?
It's hard to say. I mean, they're underrated. Well, it's a tough call with that. I mean, because, everybody's got their own opinions and everybody's different.
Yeah.
What about you, Patty?
Okay. Let's see. Obviously, the majority of the shows that did come out in the 80s are pretty underrated. Livewire was a really good show for its time, and so was Mr. Wizard's World. And you don't hear a lot of people talk about Mr. Wizard's World. It's timeless to this day. You Can't Do That on Television is not underrated because there are some people who grew up in the 80s who know about that show, but still, it should be talked about more. Let's see. We get to the 90s stuff. Let's see. The Adventures of Pete and Pete is not as underrated as it used to be, because remember when I told you that when the Adventures of Pete and Pete reunion happened and the tickets were sold out in less than 5 minutes? That showed me that the show, while it was a cult classic back then, today it's become something quite special, and it's not as underrated as it used to be. A lot of people would probably say that, let's see, I think...
You told me that you think Doug was overrated.
No, I did not. I did not say that Doug was overrated, although I think Doug Walker from the Nostalgia Critics said he doesn't care for it very much, as far as I know. Wienerville's really underrated. It's a show that was very unique, and you don't see a lot of shows like that, or even today. I thought it's very underrated. They should talk about that more. And let's see, out of all the shows that had, like, quote-unquote sexual innuendos, like Ren and Stimpy, like Rocko's Modern Life, and Angry Beavers is a bit underrated because they don't talk about it. They either talk about saying, oh, I liked Ren and Stimpy because of its fart jokes, or I liked Rocko's Modern Life because of its sexual innuendos. But they don't talk about the Angry Beavers, even though that the Angry Beavers was very witty in its own right. 2000s, I already said Caitlin's Way. I already said As Told by Ginger. Invader Zim is not as underrated as it used to be, even though now it's become a huge phenomenon. Go by to your nearest Hot Topic and you'll see how still popular it is.
Actually, it's declining slowly.
Well,
I went to Hot Topic, and there's very little Invader Zim merchandise that I saw.
No,
so slowly but surely, it's slowly dying down.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, as soon as the next big hot commodity comes along, the old stuff has got to go. I'm still surprised that they're still selling Nightmare Before Christmas stuff. I mean, when I went over to the Disney store, there was so much of it when I went there during Halloween.
Really?
Yes. That's based in overrated shows. Oh man, I can talk about a whole bunch of shows that I feel are overrated. The majority of today's Nickelodeon teen sitcoms I feel are really overrated. I don't like iCarly. I don't like Victorious. I never really got into I never really got into the majority of Dan Schneider's programs. All Grown Up.
Oh, I hate All Grown Up.
Yeah.
All Grown Up was it was terrible.
Yeah, and to think of that was Klasky Csupo's final Nicktoon that they ever created for Nickelodeon, and that was during the time in which they were getting divorced, and then they went their separate ways, and then afterwards we never heard from Klasky Csupo again.
Watch All Grown Up and you'll know why.
Exactly. That was like their send-off. It was so bad. It's like, take everything that the original Rugrats did and then just turn it into a generic show that loses the continuity. I mean, the movie was just fine. The movie made sense because it was celebrating its 10th year anniversary. That made sense. But the TV series was just pushing it way, way too much. And Klasky and Csupo even mentioned that they were going to do something for the 20-year anniversary, and it was 20 years ago that Rugrats came out just last year, and we didn't see anything happen.
No.
So, yeah, today's, if you want to talk about a couple, animation couple who are similar to what Klasky and Csupo did, I would suggest looking at the works of Craig McCracken and Lauren Faust. They're the Klasky and Csupo of this generation.
Well, what did you say, Patty?
I said, if you want to, I feel, in my opinion, that Craig McCracken and Lauren Faust are Arlene Klasky and Gabor Csupo of this generation.
And what stuff have they done?
Craig McCracken, he created shows like Powerpuff Girls. He created Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. And Lauren Faust was like the main writer. She was the producer. And now she's created shows like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. She's the creator of the show. She's the executive producer. She's the head writer. She was the one who did the animation. She's a wonderful artist. And they're a really good couple.
And they're married?
Yes, and they're married. Just like Klasky and Csupo once were.
You sure you're not married to him?
I wish. But then again, Craig McCracken's like, 30, in his like late 30s or something? I'm too young for him. All right, well, your turn, Kevin. Underrated and overrated Nickelodeon shows.
Definitely it's... I would have to say overrated would definitely be All Grown Up. That show just plainly sucked. I didn't like it at all.
Even though that, are you trying to say is that some people actually liked All Grown Up?
At the time, it was pretty popular because, it was trying to appeal for, younger audience, but I never liked it. I never cared for it.
Yeah.
Overrated? Hey Dude. I know there's people out there who like Hey Dude, and I hate it.
Oh my god. The people who like Hey Dude, you're either one of two people. You either haven't seen the show recently, or you just like really bland, boring shit.
Yeah. Underrated. Well, that's a tough one.
Well, basically, what we would say is that Nickelodeon shows that not a lot of people talk about, but they should.
I can't think of any, because every show on Nickelodeon pretty much was popular.
Not all of them.
What?
Not all of them.
Like what?
Well, when The Adventures of Pete and Pete first came out, it wasn't like a hugely popular show. It was like a cult classic, and then it was canceled right around the third season. It only started to gain...
I thought you were talking about Nicktoons, not Nickelodeon shows.
I said Nickelodeon shows, Kev.
Oh. Definitely The Adventures of Pete and Pete. I would have to say Clarissa Explains It All, because I think it was the first Nickelodeon show you had a main female character.
Yes, it was. Yes. Clarissa Explains It All was the first Nickelodeon show that had a female protagonist.
And I think that it was like a precursor to somewhat iCarly, because iCarly was like, you know, the main female of the show, and you had Clarissa and stuff like that. I don't know. I would like to see like people compare iCarly to Clarissa in some sense, even though these two shows are different in their own way.
I think it would be a lot easier if you were to compare Victorious to Taina.
How so?
Well, let's be honest. We have Victorious and Taina. Both of these girls are going to an acting school, except that one is in New York and the other one's in California. They have a group of friends who want to be actors in some way, shape, or form. The only difference...
Victorious?
Yes.
Oh, I hate that show.
Yeah, I hate that show too. In fact, Taina is also another underrated show. Put that in there.
Yeah.
Because Taina was the precursor to what the shows of today would become. As I mentioned in the review, the only reason why Taina was canceled was because Nickelodeon was gearing their programs more for boys. I mean, the show was hugely popular. Everybody watched it. Nowadays, it's just one of the many forgotten Nickelodeon shows. Okay, so I think the last question that we have here is the interviews that we've had. Obviously, what are our favorite interviews and what are our least favorite interviews?
Mark Summer, hands down, was the best interview. Candy Milo, hands down. The worst interview was that son of a bitch with the fucking Nickelodeon book that I can't stand.
Oh, yes, that asshole. We will not mention his name. Okay, my favorite and least favorite. Obviously, I loved talking to Mark Summers. Meeting Cheryl...
You got by that guy.
I'm sorry?
You got yelled at by that guy.
Yes, I know. I got yelled at by Bill Burnett, the co-creator of Chalk Zone. Yes, I know.
Just to let everybody know, Patty is traumatized by this, and she has every right to be.
Yes, I know. Every time I look at a piece of chalk, I want to scream in fear.
Well, every time you hear the word Chalk Zone, you want to scream in fear.
There you go. Okay, Cheryl Blaylock was also great.
Oh, Cheryl Blaylock.
Yes, that's the only person that we've interviewed whom we actually met. And it was an honor to meet her.
Oh, it was an honor. I love her.
Let's see who else. Candy Milo was great. Moira Quirk was very nice. Let's see. Noel McNeil was also really nice, talking about being Magellan and being Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House.
Oh, and he was awesome, too.
Yeah, he was really nice. He talked about what was it like working the animatronic puppets when he was Raphael in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. You know, everybody's favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Actually, the first one's everybody's favorite, not the third one.
I know. That's called sarcasm, Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Did you know that Patty has a joke she wants to tell?
Sorry, Kev. Anyway, let's... Okay, moving on.
See, if you weren't yelling at me, you would know what you were going to say.
Very funny. The other people that we've gotten, Christina Vidal from Taina. She was very nice. Also... Well, Kevin didn't get a chance to interview her because he's not a fan of Taina like I am.
I never said I was not a fan.
You never saw the show, Kev.
I know.
So, sorry, it doesn't count. Okay, so we talked to a lot of the people from all that. We talked to Alicia Reyes, Angelique Bates, and Brian Hearn. And a lot of, they were really nice. It was really nice for them to take the time to talk to us. My least favorite. Well, let's see. Oh man, I'm gonna have to go with that guy again. I'm not gonna. You know what? I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna burn any bridges from anybody that I did get to interview because at least they did take the time.
Patty, your bridges are already burned. I could smell them a mile away. And there was also that time when you were going to talk to the guy who voices Telly, and he yelled at you.
Oh my God, yes, that's right. Martin P. Robinson. He was so angry when I told him that I wanted to interview him. For those who don't know, Martin P. Robinson was a puppet, he still is. Martin P. Robinson is a puppeteer, and he worked on a lot of shows like Sesame Street and a lot of kid shows. I wanted to interview him because he was Biff the Cat from Allegra's Window. That was a show that Jim Jenkins created. And he was, when I wrote to him and I say, "Excuse me, Mr. Robinson, I was wondering if I can interview you." And he said, "Do you have any idea how long it took me to write this? I am so busy. I have my shows, I have raising my family, I have all these puppet workshops, blah, blah, blah. I have no time to interview it." I was like, "Oh, geez, I'm sorry. How about a phone call, or how about Skype, or how about any of those things?" He never responded to me ever again. And then when we told to Cheryl Blaylock about how he was, and he's like, "Oh, no, he's so grouchy sometimes. Like, why, he should be like Oscar the Grouch." And we were like laughing because his letter was very angry.
What was that? Remember there was a guy who asked him a question on Facebook and he got nasty and he said, "Why are you such a grouch?" Yes,
that's what Cheryl did say, yes. Yeah, there were a lot of people that we wanted to interview, but we didn't get a chance to. We were really close, though. We almost got Summer Sanders. For those who don't know, Olympic swimmer, host of Figure It Out. We almost got her.
Yeah.
We almost got a couple of people from all that. We almost got Josh Server, Giovanni Samuels. We almost got Leon Frierson.
Well, we did, but they just never got back to us.
Exactly. A lot of there was also Danny Cooksey. There was also, Lindsay Felton from Caitlin's Way. Mark Wiener. I still haven't heard from him yet. I think that's it, to tell you the truth. I know that there were a lot of people that we did write to. We wrote over 100, but we never heard back from them again. We tried really hard to get a lot of people. We wanted to get Alan Goodman. We wanted to get Geraldine Laybourne. We wanted to get the creators of the shows. We wanted to get John Kay and
Patricia Miranda. It was just funny.
Yes, thank you. We wanted to get John Kay and Craig Bartlett. Oh my God, I tried 3 times to reach to Craig Bartlett.
Well, tell them the story with you and Craig Bartlett when you wrote him that love letter.
I didn't write a love letter. I wrote a fan letter, first of all. I wrote him a fan letter about 10 years ago, and then afterwards I wrote to him on Facebook to see if he was interested, but he never got back to me, which is a shame. I really would have loved for him to talk to me. I wanted to, let's see, there was also Fred Newman, host of Livewire, voices of Skeeter and Mr. Dink on Doug. I wanted to know about him and how he got to be the voice of Skeeter and Mr. Dink on Doug. I wanted to get a hold of Peter Chung, who was the animator for Rugrats. I actually went to Klasky Chupo's official website and wrote to them 5 email requests saying, "I want to interview at least one of you." But, nope, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so, we're about to be concluding on this podcast. Is there anything that you want to say before we close our statement?
I just want to thank all the guys at Old School Lane for taking the time to ask us these questions. I mean, sorry if we didn't answer them fully or anything, but it was such a pleasure. We love you guys very much, and we're so happy to actually, for us to be allowed to, be able to share our knowledge of Nickelodeon with you guys. It was such a blast doing this, and we're going to be doing another tribute next year, which was Patty's idea of doing giant 50-foot women in the media. So this was Patty's idea of doing it, and she's very modest about it, but we're looking forward to doing that. About doing, 50-foot women in film and television and music videos and whatnot. But thank you all very much, and that's pretty much it.
And first of all, that was Kevin's idea of the yes.
No, that was your idea. I have the conversation.
Okay, fine. It was my idea. Yes. Okay, so yes, for those who are interested in knowing about what next year is, yes, we are. There's There's the 55th anniversary of when Attack of the 50-Foot Women came out. So, Kevin and I are going to be dedicating that next summer to talking about everything about 50-foot women in media. Movies, TV shows, and comic books and all that stuff. Going back to where the inspiration came from the Amazonian women, to talking about the Colossal Man, and then reaching all the way up to everybody's favorite new 50-foot woman movie, Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader.
Which, by the way, Patty is going to be watching tonight, because I know a lot of people looking very forward to the review that Patty was supposed to do. And I've been reminding Patty, like a little bird on her shoulder, telling her she has to watch it. And I know she's been avoiding it like the plague, but she will watch it tonight. She said that she's going to watch it tonight and with glee, and that she'll let me know. So either tonight or definitely tomorrow. She says by Friday she will be doing a review on Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader. Also, I just want to point out that it was a pleasure working with Patty. I mean, me and Patty, we know each other very much, and I love her dearly, and she's my best friend. And we always wanted to work on a project together, so doing this Nickelodeon tribute meant a lot to us. So, even though I know I drive her crazy all the time, I love Patty very much, and she's my best friend, and I would literally give her my arm or my leg for her because I care about her a lot.
And I feel the same way about you, Kevin. We've been best friends since we were 9, and we still keep in contact, and we've been best friends ever since, and it's been a lot of fun working on this, and we can't wait for a whole bunch of more stuff. Who knows? Maybe we'll do Cartoon Network in the future. Maybe we'll do, we've been talking about that if Ghostbusters 3 ever comes out, we'll do a Ghostbusters tribute, and...
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I know I also promised to write more on Manic Expression. I know I've been absent for a very long time, but I do promise to actually write some reviews and stuff. So you will see a lot of me very, very soon. So, I'm sorry for everybody who thinks I'm non-existent or anything. I promise I will be there. As Patty gleefully looks on the website to Epix to watch Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader, she's very eagerly looking forward to that.
Yes, very much so. And that would conclude episode 1 of Old Schooling Casual Chats. This has been Patricia and Kevin signing off. You have yourselves an awesome day.
Yes, and make sure you don't get stomped on by any giant women. By the way, the Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader review will be up by Friday or Thursday. Patricia Miranda.
Maybe by next year, yes. Okay, until...
Oh, Friday and Thursday, you promised.
Okay, well, until then, this is the co-founder